Once you've finished recording your interview, you might want to use interesting clips or parts of the interview in different ways, such as incorporating them into an exhibition, showcasing clips on a website, or sharing them on social media or in a podcast episode. The interview may also be used for future research. There are a number of things to bear in mind when thinking about these next steps. For example, how you can map out the content of the interview without having to listen back to the whole audio file each time you want to find a clip or use material from it. There are several ways that you can make it easier to use the interview, which all relate to creating a written record of the contents of the interview. For example, you can note down basic information in an archive record relating to the interview. You can create a content summary of the interview, or you can create a full transcript of the recording. All of these things make it easier to search through the interview in a written format rather than searching through the raw audio file. At the very least, it's important to create some sort of written record relating to your interview, which is where important information about the contents of the recording will be stored. This can be done in a simple table in a Word document. Some important pieces of information that you might want to make a note of are your interviewee's name, their date of birth, the date that the interview was recorded, where it was recorded, some brief themes of the interview, and a brief overview of what they talk about in the recording. By using keywords in this document, you can make it easier for people wanting to access the interview in the future and find what they're looking for. It's best to create this document as soon as possible after the interview so that you haven't forgotten what the interviewee talked about. This process is also helpful if you're partnering with a formal archive, who will store the interview and any related documentation on your behalf if you and the interviewee choose to deposit the recording there. The information provided in this short archiving document will form the basis of the written record of the interview in the archives, which will be on their catalogue and researchers can search. It's helpful to partner with an archive if you don't have capacity to store the interview in the long term and with accessibility yourself. It might be useful to contact your local archive or an archive specific to the topic that you're interviewing about before you record an interview so that they can let you know about any specific requirements they have. As well as creating a written record of specific information in the archiving document, you might want to write up more information about the contents of the interview in what we call a content summary document. Your archive may also require this on deposit. A content summary is often done by listening back to recordings and writing a short paragraph about each topic the interviewee talks about. Free software such as Transcribing allows you to listen to audio files at different speeds, which makes it easier to go through the audio file to find each topic. The paragraphs don't need to be detailed, but again, using keywords that people might use to search for specific topics is helpful for future researchers. When summarising interviews, common terms such as describes, notes, or remarks are used to indicate to the reader the level of detail the interviewee goes into about each topic. An important aspect of a summary is the inclusion of timestamps, which indicate to the reader the time code in the audio file where a new topic is introduced. If possible, it's helpful to create a summary of each interview you record for future researchers, archive partners, and anyone wishing to use parts of the interview so that they can search for keywords or topics and don't have to listen to the full interview. Here is an example of a content summary of an interview. You can see here that important information about the interview is highlighted at the top of the document. There's also a short description of the interview which notes the top-line themes of the recording. A new paragraph is made when each topic is mentioned, with timecodes showing whereabouts that is in the audio file. You will see that this content summary gives a broad overview of the topics covered in the interview and doesn't go into a huge amount of detail. The most detailed way to write up an interview is to transcribe it fully. which means to write up the interviewee's speech verbatim or in the exact way that they say it. A transcript includes every element of the interview, including filler words such as ums and ahs, and also indicates things like coughing or any other interruptions. Transcripts are useful if someone wants to use part of the interview for research or to share parts of the story and doesn't know what the interview's about. They can read through the transcript instead of listening to the whole audio file. Similarly to content summaries, timestamps are important in transcripts in order to indicate where a certain section of the interview is in the audio file. For transcripts, this is done slightly differently to summaries. Instead of listing a timecode when a new topic is introduced, timestamps are standardized to include one every 5 minutes, like this. Although they are useful to have, there are some drawbacks to creating transcripts, especially for a large collection of interviews. Creating a transcript can be very time-consuming to produce. Typically, it takes an experienced transcriber around 4 hours to transcribe just 1 hour of audio. There are new technologies that use AI to transcribe interviews, although be careful if you decide to use these, as they can sometimes be inaccurate, especially if your interviewee has an accent or is using a lot of technical terms. There may also be data protection implications of uploading interviews to AI transcribing software, so just look out for these. I've explained in this video why it's important that you create some sort of written record of the interviews you record, and the information about the interview is easily accessible in a written format. In bigger institutions or projects, such as with a museum or archive, interviews will often be held in their catalogue so that people can access them in the future. The more written material available, the easier it is to find and use parts of an interview. Sometimes, an archive will ask for a content summary or transcript of your interview, but sometimes it's your choice. There are pros and cons to each option. If you have more time, you might want to transcribe the interview as it gives a better picture of the whole audio file. But if you don't have time to transcribe, a summary can be a great place to start to help you or someone in the future find key parts of the interview in the audio file.